Welcome to Honcho on the Air, a podcast that brings you the latest talks and the latest trends in business, technology, innovation, and the candid side of C-level executives. Each week on this season, we explore topics and issues on human resources, management, leadership, HR technology, recruiting, talent management, organizational culture, and strategic HR.
Honcho on the Air is sponsored by Aces Business. Trust the expert. Now back to the show.
Our guest today is Amor Villalon. She is the Human Resources Senior Vice President of SM Investments Corporation. She oversees HR function of investment portfolio companies such as To Go Group Incorporated, Goldilocks Bake Shop, Atlas Mining and Carmen Cooper, and Philippine Geothermal Production Company. Hi, Amor, and thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah. Hi, Claire. Thank you so much for that introduction. Appreciate it.
Yes, so much on your plate, as I could see there. So today you will be talking to us about business-aligned HR metrics,
Yes.
HR analytics, and HR strategy. These are very important topics for HR executives, and we can't wait to hear your insights about this. First, let's start off with why is it important for HR to be involved in a crafting strategy?
Okay. I guess, the role of HR is more critical now than ever, right? Because during the pandemic, you have very limited resources. Most companies have either closed down or really have probably shortened the services. And so that impacts the bottom line and the top line of the companies. And so therefore, the role of HR in terms of optimizing every single investment in people or human resource, has become more critical during this time. And so alignment plays a big part in terms of optimizing every investment.
And what are the benefits of alignment?
Well, one of the benefits of alignment is, yeah, first of all, as I've mentioned, is like really the optimal use of every centavo or every peso that you invest in individual. You get to really fully use it, from probably from 5 cents to 1 peso to 99 to 100 peso. You get to really optimize it for everything that you do in the company. And of course, the other benefit of that is the focus. Again, because there's so many things happening. As I've said, during this pandemic, I guess the work has really tripled, if not, fourfold to 5 times more than before. But if there's alignment, you get to focus and zero in on what matters the most. And this, the Pareto law comes in this picture, right? You only do 20% that impacts 80% of the business. So focus is very important. Um, Also, another way would be in terms of talent retention and talent development. When there's alignment, you get everyone to support the initiative of HR. And when all the leaders support that, you get to really develop and build talents within the organization. And I think those are the three important elements of the alignment or in terms of business and HR.
And how does HR become part of the broader business in the decision-making process within the company?
First of all, that starts with the crafting of the business strategy. So you have to be there right from the start. You're not just a receiver or a recipient of the strategy, but rather you play a very proactive role right from the time that the strategies are being crafted. Like you look at the different elements because each of the function in the organization has a role to play in terms of delivering the strategy. And so HR looks into the people side of it. So right from the start, like, the head count, the type of head count, what capabilities are we addressing, what kind of culture are we building, what kind of leadership competencies do we need to drive all these results. HR would play a big part in those.
So how do HR departments move from a reactive service-oriented function to a more executive level strategic one?
I guess the involvement, what's important in HR, I always say this to the team, right? Each of us, depending on where we are in the organization, we have stakeholders. So one of the key competencies I always reiterate to my team is stakeholder management. So like I take care of the senior heads in the business, like I take care of the probably the owner, the chairman, the vice chairwoman, then down to the president, the vice presidents. I look after that audience in the organization. While the next level in my hierarchy would look at a certain group of people as well, maybe the function heads, and then the next layer would look into the manager level, and then maybe the other layer would look into the rank and file. Because it's important that we penetrate each part of the organization so that then we become more proactive instead of just receiving news in the end, but we hear the news right from the start, from the time it starts.
Mhm. How do you connect HR initiatives to the strategic initiatives of the business?
Oh, when there are clearly defined metrics right from the start. For example, when you talk about productivity not just in terms of meeting, for example, the revenue target or the EBIT target. Those are finance language, right? Other than those, what kind of productivity you can derive from the people cost. There's what we call the people cost ratio. People cost ratio is how much cost do we invest for every million that we deliver. How many manpower do we need to deliver a 1 million or 2 million or 10 million business? So we have to be able to define the kind of manpower and then the quantity and the quality of manpower so that then you can directly link whether whatever we're doing in HR really contributes to that of the business.
Mhm.
So you look at the relationship of that, and that alone would also already define that you're really adding value to the business. I mean, I have seen this happen in the last 2 years where we have seen the improvement in productivity, and leaders have become more conscious of looking at productivity. So they cannot just hire and hire and hire, hire left and right, but rather, they have become more purposive and intentional in what kind of talent that they need to bring in. At least now they start to screen because for every million that you deliver, remember, you cannot hire another million of people, right? You have to be able to really make sure that you meet all the other expenses so that you can say to yourself at the end of the day, I have delivered results.
Agree. Right. Right. And earlier you mentioned stakeholders. How do you get the buy-in of all stakeholders to achieve one goal?
One is really the amount of time that I spend with them. I would say, Claire, that I spend significant time with them in terms of how I spend my day. Like, I probably would start my day talking to them, how are things, what do you need from me today? Anything that I can do for you? At least in the next week when I start my week, like, any priority this week that you need me to focus on or any help. And at the start of the month, I do the same. What do we need to do this month? So it's like a regular ongoing conversation. You don't drop the ball in the middle, but rather it's a continuing conversation that sometimes it even takes your time at night. That's why I say it's like my day doesn't end at 5. My
Mhm.
day starts at 7 or 6:30 in the morning. And then
Mhm.
probably it ends around 8, 9 p.m., 10 p.m. because that's the only window that leaders have, right? So I have
Mhm.
to make I also flex myself so that I can accommodate those conversations.
Mhm. And also earlier you mentioned creating business goals. So what is your role in achieving these business goals?
Well, I look at the people component of the business goals, right? For example, as I've said, right, we look at for example, what kind of talent do we need to bring in? If you look at the strategy, for example, automation. So, do we have the right capability to automate certain initiatives or certain projects in the company? Do we have the IT capability to develop that? Do we have the project management capability to ensure that the project would move? Do we have change to push the project to the right path? So we look at those capabilities that we need. At the same time, we look at the leadership capability as well. Like, are the leaders able to really rally the team, or they're just there to just, hey, just do this? Or we need to also influence the mindset of the leaders. So we look at capability, we look at leadership, and also we look at I would say other elements of the organization. For example, we look at the attrition rate. How often does people, for example, we look at how many people resign or leave. Maybe what kind of talent are we losing? So we look at those things so that we make sure that at the same time, while we're driving capability leadership, we also make sure that we are able to retain the right talents, that we don't lose the talents that we bring in. That's the worst that could happen, Claire, is you recruit and bring the best talents from the market, and then by the way, hey, 6 months down the road they leave. And I think that's one of the most painful experiences as a leader.
Honcho on the Air is sponsored by Globe Labs. Redefine possibilities. Like what you hear so far? Make sure you never miss a show by clicking the follow button now. This podcast is made possible by listeners like you. Thank you for your support. Now back to the show.
Now, HR metrics, probably a big word when it comes to your industry and what you do. How do you improve this to align with your business goals?
That's a very good question, Claire. Actually, we start to build our metrics at the start of the year, right? We work with the business, once we have crafted the strategy, then we look at ways by which we could measure the impact of each of the strategy. So from the strategy, we convert it into our specific goals, department goals, and then we come up with the KPI, key performance indicators, and then of course the metrics to do that. And one of the ways we do it is really, it's really like filtering it down to the last person who will deliver the work, so and again, that's one way to look at it from a performance management perspective. You make sure that everything is connected from the big picture down to the very detail of work, that probably a rank and file, from the vice president down to the rank and file, there's connection in
Mhm.
terms of what they do. That's one of the metrics. The other metrics is actually, again, as I mentioned earlier, it's about the people cost ratio, right? For example, for every million that you spend, how many people are delivering that million, and how many people do you need to add 10 more million into that? So those are other metrics that we have. And of course, we have function specific metrics as well that we work with the leaders. We facilitate sessions with them to come up with to help identify their specific metrics. We also look at employee engagement as another metric. There's there's this survey that we run. I would say once a year. There's a proposal to do it twice a year, but at least once a year you run a survey where you wanna gauge, how engaged are the people. You wanna assess how engaged are the employees. And so that's another metric. Of course, the other metric, as again I mentioned earlier, is about attrition, right? Do you lose good talents, or you just lose the talents that you don't need? So there's what we call the bad and the good attrition. So those are some of the sample metrics. And well, in a more progressive environment, people look as well into the diversity and inclusion, right? How many female leaders do you have? Like for every 10 leadership team members, how many females are there? How many are, that's what we call I would say the culture mix, right? They might just come from one school, maybe all from Ateneo. They don't recruit from UP or other school. No, there's a tendency for some, but we have to make sure there's the mixed talents that we bring. Those are what we call diversity and inclusion,
Diversity.
and meaning you, regardless of where you graduated, regardless of your background, as long as you're capable, you're able, then you can be part of the team.
Mhm.
So some those are some of the metrics. There are still other metrics, but at least the common ones that we use across the group are those.
Mhm. Can you expound a little bit more about HR analytics?
Mm, okay. HR analytics seems to be like a high science. A lot of people say, HR analytics, why do we need to do that? Actually, HR analytics, Claire, is really just putting numbers and metrics into what we do in HR. So instead of just saying, I'm going to, the worst that could happen in an HR, Claire, is when you run programs, you're not really measuring it at the end of the day. I mean, I came from technology industry, right? I mean, I was doing an Asia Pacific role, as I mentioned to you. If you ask me, I mean, if I step back into my previous role, if you ask me like, Amor, was attrition in this country? I would know it. I tell you, top of mind, I would know it because again, analytics, meaning you're putting numbers into what is happening inside when it comes to people. So practically I would put it in that way, putting numbers and metrics into what is happening within and amongst the people. That's all about it. It's just HR analytics. It's all about your people, the HR processes, the systems, and measuring them. That would be HR analytics for me. And it becomes meaningful if it is linked to the business, of course. It's not meaningful if it is not linked to the results that the business wants to achieve.
Okay. And in terms of results, business goals, as you were saying earlier, what would you consider your top things to look out for when it comes to HR supporting these business goals and how to achieve them?
Okay, one is on I would say culture, right? Culture, because culture is the very heart of how we do things inside the organization. And culture is one thing that HR could help with. And when I say culture, that would be like how leaders behave inside the organization defines how people would work below them, right? Below them, it really like if my boss works this way, then this is how probably I should work as well. And that's how I would put as culture. And sometimes culture is the most difficult to measure. However, the way to measure it is to define behaviors. For example, the values that we have, right? The values are the ones that will shape the kind of culture that a company, would spouse. So therefore, you start with that. You start with a culture and you start with a clear set of values or vision, mission. To some it sounds like it sounds cliche, right? It's like until now in the modern world you need that. Yes, we do need the vision, mission, the values, because it defines the very heart of the organization. I've seen this in large organizations like Microsoft, where I used to be with, and really culture really played a big part in that.
Mhm.
And of course, the next one would be leadership. Leadership defines the future of the business, right? It's not just about, hiring the best talents below, but it's how the leaders would tap the talents below them and put them together, bring about the best in those people, and put them into the business context. So leadership plays a big part in shaping the culture and then delivering the results. And
I
of
love
course,
that.
I would say the other one would be again related to that would be employee engagement. Employee engagement has to do with talent retention and talent attrition. So you have to be able to identify what are the push and pull factors of the key talents that you have. Like if my star talent, what would make him stay or him leave the company? We should be able to really immediately identify what are the top five pull factors and what are the top five push factors, so that then they be able to keep the talent. I
Mhm.
think I mentioned earlier, Claire, right? We try to bring the best talents that we can out there in the market. We recruit from different parts of the world, bring them back to the Philippines, especially Filipinos who have had regional and global role.
Mhm.
And the worst that could happen is we recruit them 6 months down the road, we lose them, right? And so we have to make sure that we know what will keep them and what will make them stay, and we also know what would push them away. So once you have all this, again, the culture, the leadership, employee engagement, I think you'd be able to really influence how the business would evolve.
Mhm. Love that. Love that. Now, what HR competencies are necessary or must haves to achieve, going back to what we were talking about, alignment?
Okay, so one would be, for example, stakeholder management. I love the phrase stakeholder management because it's very critical, right? You have to start from there. You have to be able to define who are the stakeholders in your project.
Mhm.
Stakeholder management is one, and of course, the second one would be change management, because
Mhm.
it's not just about getting into a project, but how you manage the change to make sure that you deliver the right impact.
Mhm.
So in the past, I know, I mean, having been in HR for a while, in the past, stakeholder management and change management are like, what? You don't need that. You only need comp and ben, you only need recruitment. Actually, no, HR has gone beyond those traditional competencies, right? You have to go one notch higher again. Stakeholder management, change management. I would say um, being an employee champion, meaning employee champion, you understand what's happening inside, and amongst your people. And then you champion the cause that is aligned with the business,
Oh, I
right? And
love
you make
that.
sure that you rally them. You're an employee champion because you represent the voice of the people when you sit in the management table.
Mhm.
right? It's always important to, to get that, to get the pulse and the heart of the organization. I call that sensing in other. So yeah, so we have that.
That's why alignment is such a big important word when it
Yes.
comes to strategy. Now, what investments or divestments should we do, or people who are listening and watching this, what they can pick up on to achieve alignment? Again, the big word, to in response, especially these days to the pandemic.
Okay. One of the things, Claire, that we're trying to drive at is the employee experience, right? Because again, the employee experience has changed, from the traditional way of face-to-face interaction. Most of your interactions are actually happening, virtually, like what we're having now,
Correct.
It's
Mhm.
like as if we've known each other, but we have to communicate, right? And we have to really align. We have to make sure that we understand each other. This is experience, right? This is experience. If I were an employee, I would say, Claire, my experience is defined on how I feel at this point in time. So similarly, you have to make sure that employee experience is something. And so with employee experience at the heart of everything, you have to look at the budget items. Usually you have tick, tick, tick. But what is it really that would define employee experience that will really make your people stay and engage during this time? If you
Mhm.
used to invest in a lot of face to face, in a lot of town hall face to face, how are you leveraging technology?
Mhm.
So one divestment would be, instead of just having the face to face, maybe you can invest into a lot of this, I would say this soft, the some programs now
Mhm.
that you can get online, like Mentimeter, right? I mean, you have to sign up with the Mentimeter, you have to sign up with the Survey Monkey. People in the past, HR in the past wouldn't use those, but now they're part of how we run things, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
And it's not just about leveraging the Teams, but even Teams has evolved. If you look at Microsoft Teams, right, used to be like a Skype. I mean, I was from Microsoft. So it's like, what's a Skype? It's really like without anything in the background, without any blurry on that, and then the sound is really different. But now
Right.
it has also evolved, right? And you
Right.
look at Zoom, it has also evolved. So it's the same way in the way we interact. We also have to evolve. We have to tap technology that would bring about good experience in our people. We do copy hand, by the way. We do copy hand, and we use those technology. There's one thing that we do, for example, in HR. I love this with my team because I don't get to meet all of them because there's work from home, and
Mhm.
then of course I also go around different companies. But every time there's copy hand, I make sure I sit in that,
Mhm.
because there's that interaction, or there's question and answer using the technology again, using the
Right.
using the survey monkey, and we
Mhm.
get to interact in just 1 hour. It's
Right.
very meaningful. So we consistently do it. I know it's a long answer here, but you have to be able to look at those things,
I
technology.
love that. Mhm.
Yeah, you have to really learn it. A lot of people tell me, I don't know how to do that. Then get someone to teach you.
Mhm.
So there's no excuse. Employee experience is key.
Mhm.
If you're used to a classroom training, come on. Classroom training is no longer just the only way you can deliver training. You have to be able to, like, you do a lot of podcasts like this one, right? Get an SME, get a subject matter expert to record a session,
Mhm.
or maybe get someone to sit in your meeting just to do a 10-15 minute session. So even the way we look at training, it has to evolve. Not anymore a classroom traditional training, but divest that fun.
Mhm.
Again, divest some of the face-to-face activities into that e-tech approach in terms of connection. And
Mhm.
at the same time, the classroom, instead of the usual classroom budget, divert it into, again, technology. Because
Mhm.
technology plays a big part now in terms of agility, in terms of flexibility, and in terms of impact. Yeah,
Mhm.
I mean, other things maybe, I know in the past we used to give out hams. So this is one example here. We used to give out hams on Christmas.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, every
What
Christmas you
what what do you do now?
now, and we had to change that, right? We had to just credit it to their account, send them a
Right.
good card, with a good message, or maybe send an e-card or something. So it has also shifted. I
Right.
mean, in Philippines, we're quite laid back in that sense, but of course, again, it has also shifted from the traditional physical ham. Now you get this. Either you get a gift check or you get a credit into your account, buy your own ham. And by the way, there's this additional thing that we want to give you as a thank you for what you have done this year. So it's also shifted. It has become more, it's like I like it now, it has become more personal. Yeah.
Yes,
So those
everything
are
has
the fun ones.
evolved.
Yeah.
Yes, that's right. Well, that's all the time we have for now, Amor. Thank you so much for speaking to us and sharing your wisdom to us. Definitely learned a lot from you today.
Yeah. Thanks so much, Claire. Appreciate the chat.
Thank you for joining us this week on Honcho on the Air. Make sure to visit our website, cnhr.org, where you can subscribe to us on Spotify so you'll never miss a show. While you're at it, make sure to like and subscribe to our social media pages to get the latest news and updates. Thank you, and until the next episode.